Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the podcast. I've lost track and I'm not trying to keep track anymore. It's Raptor's job. But we are going to do another reading. No direct theme this time, unlike around the holidays of Halloween, where we had the theme of spooky stories. It's just general fiction, which could be anything. And we've got some uh, submissions, and me just also trying to fill out the runtime. Honesty, right? All right, so listen up, you two. Choose which story you want first. Oh yeah, I should also forget to mention Skull won't have a mic for this, but he is here.
Mm-hmm.
I can do a couple of poems too, Skull. You just need to send me the link to them. And then pin it, please. You know, we need a resources chat. I'll work on that later. But yes, we need. What did you guys want to hear first? Like, you just need to choose something.
Just to get it over and just pick one thing. Oh, go ahead. Cool. Yeah, sure, why not?
So Lizzie's alright. I have that one up. So the one from Lizzie this time around, because we also read one of his stories last time. This is, and I'm going to butcher a lot of these because fantasy words go burr. Why? Anyway, this one I believe is Saren. I'm gonna just do Saren. Saren Lee Bassett. Oh fuck me, this is gonna be fun. All right, and I'm told this one has content warnings for abuse, if I'm not mistaken. So there's your one warning. Enjoy.
Yes, the channel will get demonetized
Oh, for
completely
fuck's sake.
and never
No
be
one
able
gives a
to
shit
work.
anymore, right? All right,
True.
let's begin this. My name is Garen. In the town of Durnhee, nestled in the region of Kaibas, Uno to the west, Rinu to the south, and Taltu to the southeast. The sun shone brightly. Light streamed through fresh leaves bouncing off the puddles. Saren Lee Bassett was out behind her hut with her father. Her father, Bassett, grunted as he brought his axe down, splitting another log in two. Can I? Saren, the young girl grinned as she swung her arms down, imitating her father. Her red curls flopped in the breeze as she faked a grunt. Her father laughed and shook his head, wiping the sweat from his pale skin. You're too small for that, girlie. Saren pouted, crossing her arms. Bassett sighed and put his axe down. It thumped against the ground as he leaned it on a tree. He walked over to his daughter and ruffled her wild hair. Here, lassie, he said as he handed her for Bob. Go to Corowin's and fetch us some bread. Okay, Saren agreed, still pouting as she shoved the coins into her apron pocket. Good girl, her father patted on her on the shoulder. Don't dilly-dally. Sarah nodded and jogged out of her yard and down the street. As she walked, she caught a couple glances from neighbors, some curious and others disdainful. Finally, at Gorowin's hut, she took a breath and knocked on the door. The door opened and two women stepped out. Gorowin was tall with dark skin and a full figure, her hair decorated with braids and flowers. Serene, girlie, did your mother send you? She knelt down and frowned, straightening Serene's dress. How's she doing? Oh, she grumbled. You're filthy. Serene frowned as Gorowin attempted to tidy her up. Papa told me to get bread. She fished for the bob in her apron, taking it out and handing it to the woman grooming her. Gorwin smiled and took the coins. Lola! She turned to the young girl to her side. Go fetch us a loaf. The woman stood, satisfied with her attempt to clean the Surin up. Yes, Mama.
Handmade.
The young lady, Lola, rushed inside the hut. While they waited, Gorwin looked Surin up and down. You look like your mother. She grinned at the young girl. Surin was about to reply with a half-hearted thanks when Lola stepped back out beside her mother. I think she looks like her father, Mama. I suppose. The eyes, Gorwin replied. She's paler, too. A bit of both, then. Gorwin took the bread from her daughter and rubbed it Serin's shoulder. Run along home, girlie. Serin nodded. Her brows furrowed and carried the loaf of bread back towards her parents' hut. On her walk home, Saren saw movement from the corner of her eye. She turned to see a frog hopping in a nearby puddle. The young girl grinned, setting the bread on a nearby patch of grass and chasing after the amphibian. She stumbled and slipped in the puddle, streaking mud up her white dress. She giggled and leaped forward, grabbing the frog. It sat in her palm, riveting. Siren! A woman's voice called. Siren's stomach dropped. She yelped and tossed the frog from her hand, hastily standing and attempting to straighten her muddy dress. Her hands left more a mess as she tried. The woman, Siren's mother, marched up to the girl, picking up the bread on her way. You useless girl! Her mother shouted. Get in the hut! Yes, Mama, Siren mumbled, her eyes beginning to form tears as she ran home. She bolted through the door, stopping in the immaculately tidy kitchen. Her mother followed closely behind. The woman stepped slowly through the door, one hand gripping the bread, the other resting on her pregnant belly. Siren's mother looked down at her sternly. She set the bread down and placed both hands on her hips. How hard is it to walk down the street for a loaf of bread? I'm sorry, Mama. Tears streaked down Siren's freckled cheeks as she wrapped her arms around herself and backed away. Her mother sneered and grabbed her by the hair, dragging her to a chair, forcing her to sit. I'm sorry? I'm sorry! The girl sobbed and struggled in her mother's iron grip. She winced, meeting her mother's dark brown eyes. Across the room, her brothers peeked in. Walking past the two boys, her father strode into the kitchen. Oh gosh. Sirius, what is going on? His eyes widened as he saw his sobbing, mud covered daughter. Saren couldn't even bring home bread without playing in the mud. Your belt, Bassett. She glared at her husband, holding out her hand to him, keeping her other firmly on Cern's dark red hair. Bassett sighed and took off his belt, handing it to his wife. She tore it from him. Hands on the table, Cern, she ordered. Cern sniffled, slowly raising her shaking hands and setting them on the hardwood. The belt whipped down once, then again and again. Cern wailed each time, crying and apologizing. Enough, Sirius! Bassett grabbed his belt and pulled it from his wife's grip. She's a child. That's enough. Cern's tears splashed against her reddened hands. Her mother looked down at her, seething. You're too old for this, girlie. Sirius let go of her 7-year-old daughter's tangled hair. Saren stood stumbling, wiped her tears, and ran off to hide in her cot. Late in the evening, the open flame warmed Saren's hands as she scrubbed and chopped potatoes. She dropped the starchy cubes into the stew pot hanging above the fire, stirring the mixture of vegetables and cod. She took a step back, letting the flavors simmer together as she pushed her curls from her face. The 11-year-old girl had gotten used to cooking for her little siblings, brothers Aaron and Gwyn, and her 3-year-old sister, Allah. Their parents were out for the evening, a dinner party with the neighbors, they said. Saren was used to it at this point, and as she stirred the stew a few times more before putting out the flame, she preferred quiet nights tending to her siblings. The smell of cod and vegetables wafted through the walls of the hut, past the small kitchen and to the bedrooms and sitting rooms surrounding it in the circular home. As Saren readied the food and set the table, Aaron, Gwen, and the law came crawling from their bedrooms. The 3 youngins eagerly sat in their chairs, pulling their bowls towards themselves, devouring the stew and mumbling their thanks to their older sister. Saren took her own seat, eating slower to keep an eye on the 3 as they finished up. Aaron stood up first, broth dripping down his chubby face. Saren chuckled. You better wash up, she reminded her brother. Wash up! Wash up! Alan giggled, her face even messier, her deep brown eyes glittering with enthusiasm. Saren shook her head and got up, wetting a cloth and wiping all 3 of her siblings' faces. The boys protested but didn't fight her. She sent the boys off to sleep while she carried Allah to the girls' room, tucking her sister in. Walking back to the kitchen, Surin finished the last bites of her own supper, then placed the dirty dishes aside to be washed. She sighed and stepped up to the window, letting the breeze brush her face. She grinned. It was a lovely night in Durny. Serene took a quick glance at the dirty dishes. She'd take care of it soon, and hastily wrapped a cloak around her shoulders before heading outside for a short walk. The bell for a compline had been tolled an hour or two previous. Serene wasn't sure. She trotted briskly through the cold breeze under a blanket of starlight. She passed one hut, then another, and another. Feeling then that she could head back home, she turned a corner to round her way back. As she turned, she felt something hit her shoulder. Serene stopped, seeing a couple of pine cones hit the dirt and grass below her. She looked behind herself to face a couple of neighborhood boys, likely 2 or 3 years older than she was. The boys giggled, their eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "It's the Renu girl," the taller one grinned. "Hey, Renu, your mama let you out?" The other one began to walk towards her. Serena groaned, turned away, and continued her way home. The two boys jogged after her. The taller one called, "Hey, wait up, Rin! I have a name!" Serena snapped. She stepped forward, picked up the pine cones, and threw them back at the boys. Scowling, she turned away again and ran towards her home. From the distance, she heard them. What a weirdo. Her breath and heart quickened. Her feet hit the ground harder. Can't take a joke. Whatever. Their voices quieted finally. For a moment, Seren forgot where she was. Looking around, she must have ran in the wrong direction. She sighed and circled back until she recognized her surroundings. Seren ended up being out much later than she wanted to be. At last, Seren made it back to her own hut. She cracked the door open slowly, pausing as she heard her mother's angry voice. Seren felt as though her heart stopped. "What a useless girl!" "Sirius, calm down." Her father's voice was soft. "She can't even finish the damn dishes before running off." "Seren is still young." Bassett tried to calm Sirius. Seren, with cold sweat slipping down her neck, snuck in through the door and closed it quietly. She tiptoed close to the walls towards her and Allah's bedroom. Just a couple more steps. Just one more. Fingers as strong as steel gripped her hair, pulling her back as her arm reached out to the handle. "Seren, come here, you stupid girl!" Seren yelped, tears forming in her blue eyes, as her mother dragged her by the hair to the dirty pile of dishes, shoving her the rest of the way. Seren stumbled forward and gripped the counter. "Mama, I'm—" "Shut up and finish this!" her mother shouted. Her father gently gripped her mother's arm and led her out of the kitchen, leaving Seren with tears rolling down her face to finish the chores. After Seren had made a trip to the well and began washing, she heard the quiet steps of her little siblings. They tiptoed into the kitchen and hugged her, wordlessly as she worked. As the bell tolled for set, Seren stumbled through the door to her hut, grunting as she lugged a large bag of potatoes over her shoulder. She leaned the sack against the kitchen counter and panted, wiping the sweat from her forehead. Her brown skin tanned more than usual from the garden work. On the immaculately clean dining table, a small note caught her eye. "I can't do this anymore, Sirius. If I could have taken the kids, I would have. That's my only regret. Goodbye, Bassett." Seren stared frozen. It felt as if her heart stopped. She couldn't move even if she tried. This wasn't real, right? The note fell from her hand and drifted onto the table. Without thinking, she ran outside. She ran around their hut, ran down the street. There was no sign of her father. She walked back. Pushing the door to her home open, she saw her younger sibling staring up at her. Seren bit her lip and knelt down to them. Before she could speak, she heard the door creaking open. Seren ushered her siblings into her in Allah's bedroom, carrying the small girl. They made it in and closed the door behind them as their mother walked into the kitchen. "Seren, put these potatoes away!" Sirius called from the kitchen. Serene stayed put, letting her siblings curl up in the cots. Before her mother shouted again, Seren heard sobbing and the clattering of dishes being thrown onto the floor. What's happening? Gwyn rubbed his eyes as he walked towards Seren, Aaron, and Allah following. Papa is. Seren began. Papa left. He said he can't come back. Papa? Aaron cried and grabbed Seren. Gwen's eyes began to water. Will he come back? Seren shook her head. I don't think so. As Sirius's wailing from the kitchen pierced the walls of the bedroom, Seren's little siblings began to bawl. She pulled them close, wrapping her arms around them, letting them cry as she held back her own tears. 40. Serena pushed up from the grass, lowering again. 41. She pushed up again, her arms tense, strong biceps dripping with sweat as the sun beat down on her. She reached 100, stood, wiped her forehead, and straightened her tousled curls. Seren! Allah called as she jogged around the hut up to her sister. Allah was now 8 and Serene 16. With every year, Allah looked more and more like their mother. Serene grinned, lifting her little sister and twirling her around. The two girls giggled as Serene set her sister back down. Their brothers, both a few years older than Allah, walked over to join them. Mama wrote us a shopping list. Aaron handed the small piece of parchment to Serene. Serene looked over the items and nodded. This won't take long. The tall girl smiled and led her siblings around the hut and down the road. Gorowin for bread and eggs was their first stop. Saren wore trousers, her tunic with the sleeves rolled up, and dusty work boots. Her hair was hastily tied back with a tall, toned frame. She often caught curious glances and rude remarks. Even Gorwin and her daughter Lola, with their colorful skirts and flowers and braids, shook their heads at Saren as she handed them the bob. Oh, there we go. As Saren turned and walked away after making pleasantries and saying thank you, she heard them mumble. Homely, that one. Good with kids, though, Mamma, Lola replied. She may make a good wife, certainly not a pretty one, though. Saren bit down on her lip as she led her siblings to the next stop. In a way she couldn't describe, those words felt like a punch to her gut. She couldn't care less about being pretty, but something felt wrong. Next, they headed to the town square. Earl sold vegetables at a stand near the well. Saren handed the kinder old man some bob for potatoes and carrots. Such nice young lassies you are. He smiled warmly at Saren and Ella, tossing Ella an apple and waving off the coin for it. The young girl caught it and grinning. Thank you, sir. Saren took her sister's hand and led her siblings away, her stomach twisting in knots. All right. Saren straightened her tunic and tied her shoulder-length hair back. Her mother walked past, giving a disheartened glance. It looked better longer, Sirius muttered. Saren refused to react. She moved on to her pack, throwing some clothes, a couple books, dried food, and a bag of coin into it. As she buckled it shut, she felt a small girl's hands tugging on her clothes. Will you be gone long? Allah whimpered. Saren shrugged. She was now 18 and more than ready to leave home. As long as it takes to line my pockets. She turned and grinned to her little sister. I won't forget to come visit. The tall girl slung her bag over her shoulder and walked into the small kitchen. Dishes and wash towels were strewn loosely about. Her mother was still in bed robes despite the sunlight streaming in through the window and the tolling of the non's bell. Her brothers bolted towards her. Both were nearly her height now. Come back soon, Saren. Aaron was about to cry.
Damn. Damn, damn, damn.
Make lots of quid, Gwyn smiled wide. Saren chuckled and ruffled both the boys' hair. Take care of home, then. They both nodded in response. Sirius looked up at her daughter, tall and muscular with a disdainful glare, unspeaking. Saren looked at her mother, also unspeaking, and with one last smile at her siblings and a twinkle in her blue eyes, she left the hut. She left Durney. On her way out, a man on the path greeted her. Good day, lad. A little help? The short, stout man called. Saren turned to see him struggling to lift sacks of potatoes onto his cart. Sweat trailed down his dark skin as he strained and struggled. Saren nodded and headed over, baffled a moment at being called lad. She helped with little trouble, hardly breaking a sweat as she one-handedly lifted the large sacks and set them on the cart. Thank you, lad. Yeah. Saren's cheeks flushed. Any time, sir. The man gave her a look, eyes squinted, then shook his head and smiled. Off with you, then. And Saren continued on her way. Her way or his way? Days later, Saren made it to Linnell, the largest city in Kybus. It was location of one of the Briniuses? Fuck's sake. I'm sorry. And thus where the Kybus Rex did most of his work. Saren paced in her room at one of the affordable inns. He tossed her wrapped bandages from hand to hand, staring in the mirror, tracing her body with her eyes. She grimaced and pulled her tunic off, tossing it to the floor. Her eyes dropped as her undershirt fell aside and she saw her naked chest. It didn't feel right. It didn't look right. He gripped the bandages. Oh, he wrapped them around his chest, flattening the stubborn lumps of flesh. He grasped for breath, but as he saw his chest flattened, he smiled. A joy he'd never felt enveloped him. It hurt. It was hard to breathe. It was highly uncomfortable, and yet he'd never felt more content. While throwing his clothes back on, he paced around the mirror, furrowing his eyebrows. Osane? Osane? He put his hands on his hips and shook his head. Gwaine! He grinned. His grin fell, and he mumbled negatively. Garen. Garen. He slowly turned to look at his reflection, his red curls falling over his shimmering blue eyes. My name is Garen. There you go. And that is the story of Saren Lee Bassett. Bassett? I probably butchered so much in this whole fucking thing.
Yeah,
It's fine.
I
It's
believe that.
fantasy.
Yeah, it's fantasy, and also I think some of those names are so similar to like some of the IRL cultures. I cannot place my tongue on it. Some of the names.
Exactly. I know Skull enjoyed that. Talk amongst your two real quick. I need to go take a picture real quick.
So, Skull, how you liked it? Words, emoji with a smile face. It was good. Skull says. I personally liked it. It was interesting, very interesting.
I do have to agree. It was good. I did enjoy reading this again. I just didn't really care for the the fantasy words.
The fantasy words is difficult, but I'm like meh on it because I'm personally I'm just like it's names, it's names. It's nothing that I had to like be super annoyed or super complaining, so I won't give any points off of that personally. But I don't know if you guys do. I would not put past it for both of y'all, but I think it's a really good story so far.
Well, I know for that story is kind of like the side stories for his Value of a Heartbeat story.
Cool.
So it's more just like to flesh out the world and universe that he created. Because I know last time when we read one, it wasn't necessarily a horror story, but it had horror elements because of how certain scenes were written. But that was just to further develop the uh, world, essentially.
Yeah.
All right.
Kind of like a Marvel Cinematic Universe
Yeah,
type of
almost.
fleshing out.
Almost. All right. So, what's the next one you two want? We have Vanguard, Absolution, and then we have whatever Skull might share with us. What do you want to hear me read first?
I'm gonna wait for Skull just to hear his opinion first.
Okay, Skull, you're the one who gets to choose again. You put him on the spot here, Ruthless.
Okay, if you don't have, oh wait, type in.
Yeah, he's typing. As he curses
Suffer,
you.
suffer. Skull says, then
Damn it,
text
Ruthless.
it afterwards. God damn it, ruthless
That was great. Yeah, asshole.
asshole. I say, meh.
As we all know, it's hard to offend you, my man. Alright, so what do you guys want?
If that's the case, if you don't know anything, I probably will say absolution
Absolution? Alright.
because I will admit I'm more interested in that whole.
Alright. Well, let
You.
me tell you this right now. This is very much a first draft,
I see.
but it is definitely better than what I wrote last night, so. And there also might
Skull
be a
is typing.
prologue added to this. I'm not sure. I'm still obviously drafting. But we'll see what Skull has to say. Well, I finished my snack.
Nice.
It's not really dinner, it's not really lunch either, it's just food. I don't know, some people consider 2 hot dogs food, right? A meal?
It technically is a meal. I don't know why people consider that fucking horrible shit as a fucking meal.
Well, I mean, it does in a pinch.
Yeah. Oh, so you want? Oh,
Alright, I can read that.
okay. Yeah, sure.
Do you want that first, Skull, or do you want to just get Absolution out of the way for Ruthless? Let you be Ruthless. Okay. We get Absolution out of the way then. Start thinking about what you want to have read next, Skull, because you're choosing. Alright. Oh, fuck me. Alright, so this is Absolution Chapter 1. This is technically a sneak peek at the draft for the first chapter. So, here we go. Oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. And just for context, this is a fan fiction. This is not an original work like we've mostly read on here. Actually, I think at this point there's only one other thing that's original work, but I think at this point we might save it till the end because it doesn't look like Skull knows what he wants to have read next after this. All right. Plague? Plague, where are you? You're going to make me late. Adrian searched the house for Plague. He had the news on in the background while he looked. He paused every so often to listen to the reports, but resumed his search. He wandered into the kitchen and opened the fridge. A black cat was curled up inside next to an empty container of camembert. Plague! Plague shot up. He meowed and darted out of the fridge. Adrian pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm not going to question it. Come on, we have to get going. Plague meowed. He jumped onto Adrian's shoulders. Adrian returned to the living room. He took a moment to listen to the broadcast. The reporter was interviewing random people on the streets out about the state of the city, of their miraculous team, Chat Noir, and their enemy, Papillon. Many people were upset or angry with the state of things. They made demands for the heroes to show some results that isn't just stopping monsters. Others demanded the heroes leave and take the villain with them. Adrian snorted. He grabbed the remote but paused. The reporter approached a young woman with long black hair that shone blue in the light, her attention on a statue of Scarlet Knight, a former hero. She startled and her bluebell eyes widened when approached by the news crew. Young lady, would you give us your thoughts on the miraculous team and the villain they claim to fight? Oh, I don't have much to say. Nothing? Well, it's scary what we're going through. I mean, 2 years feels like a long time to face this threat, but we can't do anything except leave our faith in the heroes. Just like my dad says, we need to trust and believe in those who fight for us. And do you believe that? I try. It wavers at times when things get really bad, but I try. It's all I can do. It's all we can do. The reporter thanked the woman for her time and moved on. Adrian turned off the TV and stared at it. Plague me out. He flicked Adrian's cheek with his tail. Sorry, just got distracted. Let's go. Marinette walked through the city. She headed for home after her time in the park. She paused near City Hall as a riot had brewed. The crowd earned the attention of other onlookers as they screamed and shouted. They all demanded answers to the threat to them, salvation from the evil butterfly, and for the ladybug. Marinette tilted her head. She had heard the people cry for this ladybug for a few months now. Riots cried for it, posters were plastered over the city, and resistance against the miraculous team had brewed. She wasn't sure what this ladybug was, but she assumed it was like the miraculous heroes. Each of them were an animal-themed hero: the stalwart turtle Carapace, charming bee Queen Bee, and their leader the black cat, Chat Noir. Even if this ladybug was like them, it made her wonder why it was so important. The question had been asked many times over the months. Many didn't have the answer, just theories. The ladybug was the answer to salvation. The ladybug would be the force that liberated them. The black cat was inferior to the ladybug as the black cat only destroys. Then there was the older crowd who said the Scarlet Knight was a ladybug, although no one knows for sure if the Scarlet Knight was or wasn't. The only people that ever saw the Scarlet Knight were the criminals she fought. Their accounts weren't as reliable as the story changed every time. Even when Marinette's mother, Sabine, spoke of the Scarlet Knight, it was never the same tale twice. Every version was different, like all the other heroes Sabine told her about. However, there were things that never changed when Sabine told those stories. The Scarlet Knight was always courageous, selfless, and loving. The Scarlet Knight fought not because she had to, but because she wanted to protect those she couldn't. Because of that, it made the Scarlet Knight incredible. Marinette smiled when she remembered the stories. She remembered when she was younger, she wanted to be like the Scarlet Knight. She wanted to be a hero for the people, to always be there when they needed her. It was a fantasy she lived in over and over again, like her friend Rose with her fairy tales. Unlike Rose, she had to wake up and intend reality. She wouldn't be a hero like Chat Noir and his team, and she definitely wouldn't be like the Scarlet Knight. Even though Marinette had to wake up to live in the real world, that didn't stop her from dreaming. To be strong, dependable hero that the people look up to keep them safe so they didn't have to live in fear, to keep the peace so everyone could live in relative ignorant bliss. She may be able to achieve some of that, but not in the ways she truly wanted. Marinette's alliance ring buzzed. She looked away from the crowd at it. A screen popped up with her messages. Rose had messaged the group chat with her, Julika, Alia, and Alex. Rose told them to keep their schedules open tonight. Alia and Alex asked why, but Rose didn't share, insisting it was a surprise for later. She hummed and sent a thumbs up emoji. She looked at the time and saw it was just past 2. She hurried along and headed home. Adrian stepped into work. The staff greeted him as he made his way to the elevator. He paused when he saw Natalie with a new familiar face. He called out her name and approached. Adrian, good to see you. And Plague? Plague me out. Always happy to see you, Natalie. Who's this young lady? I haven't seen her face before. This is Miss Coffane. She was just signed on as the newest model for the agency. I took the liberty of volunteering to give her a tour of the building. Please, call me Julika. Pleased to meet you, Julika. Likewise, Mr. Agrest. Please, Mr. Agrest is my father. You can call me Adrian. Julika bowed her head. Say, Natalie, would you mind if I continue the tour? Take the time to get our newest edition? You are needed soon for a photo shoot. I don't see any harm in her shadowing me for that, no? Natalie sighed. Very well. I'll see you in 10 minutes, Adrian. Don't be late. Adrian and Julika watched Natalie leave. Adrian motioned for Julika to follow as they stepped into an elevator. So I'll be working with you more, it seems. Nervous? Very much so. I'm taking major steps in all aspects of my life. I mean, weren't you nervous? A long time ago. Although 2 years is a long time to work through those nerves. Do they ever get to you now? They do, but I just dust it off. I know what I'm doing and what needs to be done, no matter what the people say. I'm glad we have a leader like you. I don't think I'll be able to handle the criticism that you get. Well, I've heard these things all my life. I know there's no real weight to their words. They're just said to make you feel bad for what you've done or what they believe you failed to do. But if it brings any comfort with you, we should be able to finally catch Papillon. I hope so. I'm still adjusting to my powers, after all. I know. It's a major shift. Just take your time. Once you're ready, we'll begin the hunt. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. People poured into it while Adrian and Julika stepped out. She followed him down an empty hallway to a pair of doors. Natalie waited outside for them. You're early for once. Natalie, you wound me. I've been early before. In more ways than you might think. Adrian snorted while Julika giggled. Get ready, you two. We have a photo shoot to do, and then someone needs to make an appearance on the news today. I hear you, Natalie. You ready, Julika? Julika reached into her vest pocket. She pulled out a small creature with a big head. The creature resembled a mouse. Plague eyed the mouse and transformed into the same creature. Adrian raised his hand that had a large silver ring on his ring finger. Julika pulled out a coin pendant necklace from her shirt. Plague, claws out. Mulu, get squeaky. Marinette sat at the countertop in her parents' kitchen. She listened to Sabine preparing dinner while she finished her classwork. She closed her laptop once she was done. She stretched as Sabine started setting up for dinner. She gave Sabine a kiss on the cheek, then flipped on the TV. The news came on. Marinette moved to change the channel, but paused when Chat Noir came onto the screen. The reporter interviewed him on the current state of the city. She listened as he reassured the reporter that he and his team were doing everything they could to stop Papillon. He went on to say that they have a new member to assist with the task. The crowd behind him erupted into a frenzy and cut off the interview. The people rioted as they cried it out for the ladybug, their savior. The footage it cut as Queen Bee's power was used to pacify the crowd. It's crazy out there, isn't it, Mom? It is. Hopefully, we'll see an end with this new hero. What about this ladybug? I've heard people whispering it for a few months now. I have too. Everyone seems to think it's the answer to salvation, but she's long gone. What do you mean? Well, there was a hero ladybug before Chat Noir and his team. She was the Scarlet Knight. So she was a ladybug, like people are saying? She was. A marvel, that one. You were lucky if you saw her and weren't her target. Does that mean you saw the real her? I did once. I was attacked by some muggers. She swooped in a blaze of red and black glory. She was magnificent. No way! What was she like? Did she look anything like her statue? I don't remember all that well, Mari. It was dark, and the only pieces of her that stuck out was the red and silver. Well, what do you remember aside from that? Sabina turned off the burners, she moved the food, then sat beside Marinette. Let me think. There was the whirl of her yo-yo as she swooped in from above, the whoosh of her cape in the wind, the bright red ladybug emblem on her cape, her gentle face and bright purple eyes. Wow. What do you think happened to the Scarlet Knight? I'm not sure. I like to think she grew up, realized there was more to life than just fighting villains. Do you think she'll ever come back? I don't think so. Her time is long since past. There are new heroes to carry the torch. Do you think a new Scarlet Knight will rise? Maybe. It's hard to say, but that's not something for us peasants to worry about. You got your classwork done, right? Mom, I'm not in high school anymore. I don't need to be reminded to do my work. Oh, honey, I know. But that first year you did, it was an adjustment. I've gotten better. I've really gotten used to this system, and I'm even a few weeks ahead of my lessons. The headaches are even getting better as I understand the material more. Sabine smiled. She hugged Marinette. I'm glad you're doing well. We're so proud of you, dear. Thanks, Mom. Hey, is dinner almost done? It is. Will you get your father and let him know? Will do. Marinette kissed Sabine's cheek. She turned off the news and headed downstairs. She stepped into the bakery. Tom looked over from the register. Hey, kiddo, dinner almost ready? It is. Do you need any help with closing? I could. Would you watch the register while I clean the back? Sure thing. Tom smiled and headed to the back. Marinette watched the store as the closing hour drew near. She moved from the register once it was time to lock up. She locked the doors as Alia slammed into it. She gasped and snickered as Alia fell back. Rose and Julika rushed to help Alia while Alex laughed. She unlocked the door and let them in. You know it's closing time, right, girls? We know. We came for you, girl, Alia said. What? Why? Have you checked your phone? Rose asked. No, what's up? We're going to celebrate! Julika just got signed into a contract deal to be a model, Rose announced. Marinette blinked and squealed. They all jumped around Julika and hugged her. Julika, that's amazing! What are we doing, dinner? Yep, my mom has offered to make us a special meal over at Le Grand Paris. We were also hoping we could maybe get some of the best pastries in all of Paris, Alia said. Well, Dad's in the back. Could you girls watch the door while I get ready? We got it, girl. Marinette headed upstairs. She started towards her room, then headed to the kitchen. Hey, Mom, I'm going to head out with the girls. You are? What about dinner? We're going to celebrate. Julika just got a modeling deal. That's amazing, but it is late. Will you girls be safe? We have our alliances. They'll inform us if there's a monster attack. Sabine frowned. She looked at the silver gadget ring on Marinette's index finger. She knew they were reliable in delivering that information, but she couldn't shake the feeling that crawled up to her. She took a deep breath. Okay, and forgive me, Mari. I know you're an adult, but please come home immediately after dinner. I don't want you out at night. Marinette smiled. She hugged Sabine. I will, and thank you. I love you. I love you too, Mari. Now hurry along. Don't keep your friends waiting. Marinette kissed Sabine's cheek, then hurried to her room. Sabine stood for a moment longer. Dread rose within her that threatened to consume her. She stepped from the kitchen and looked at the door. She ran a thumb over the key she kept under her shirt. Marinette's door closing broke her thoughts as she turned back to Marinette. I'll see you out, Mari. Marinette nodded. They headed downstairs. Marinette joined the girls as they buzzed about. Sabine stood beside Tom. She took his hand as she watched the girls. They filed out of the door except for Marinette. Marinette ran back to her parents and hugged them. See you after dinner. Love you guys. Tom and Sabine hugged Marinette and kissed her cheek. Marinette returned the gesture, then hurried after her friends. Sabine's smile faded when Marinette was gone. The dread gnawed at her and made her sick. Honey, what's wrong? Tom, I'm scared. Tom pulled Sabine into a hug. They'll be fine. Marinette's been safe, and those alliances keep them safer. Besides, the heroes will be out at this hour, right? If one of those vile creatures shows up, they'll be around to keep her safe. Sabine forced a smile. You're right. She's been safe all this time. What would make tonight any different? It'll be all right. We just need to have faith in our protectors. They haven't failed us yet. Right. Faith. That's what we need. I'm going to finish dinner. See you upstairs soon? Wouldn't miss it, dear. Sabine and Tom shared a kiss before Sabine headed upstairs. She looked to her bedroom door down the hall. The dread chewed at her. She took a deep breath and reassured herself. Marinette would be fine. They would be fine. Nothing bad would happen. And there you go. There's your first draft of Absolution.
I really like it. It's really dope. It gives me like the fantasy vibe, like gives me fantasy vibes of a little bit of fantasy vibes of the. I'm trying to remember. Oh, a miraculous. Kind of does give me those vibes.
But you think it's a good
And
start for what you know I'm going for with the edgier kind of take to it?
yeah, yeah, and it does have a little bit of dark fantasy, but it's not like
Dark.
it's not.
Well, I
It's
say
not
that, but you haven't read the next. I'm still working on the next part, and I get a little dark there. I will admit
okay.
to that.
I mean, if it's dark fantasy, I dig it. I kind of do like dark fantasy when it's done correctly. Keyword correctly.
Yeah.
There's so many that done so incorrectly that it's just uh, like that's I kind of do I do think dark aspects of stories does it is very tricky when you don't do it correctly. I do think between you Soul does a Solizzi does a pretty good job with like hinting because I do sense some hints of dark and just specifically just show
No, yeah, I
that
definitely
it
get
is.
that too because I've read his most of his work, Value of a Heartbeat. I haven't read all of it. I think I'm missing on like 5 or 4 chapters, which is the last bit of it. He does a good job when it comes to those darker elements. Again, when we read the one for Halloween, again, it wasn't really a scary story, but it had those darker elements that could read off as horror if you isolate them. And then, of course, the one from tonight, which had the, is a lot more like, I wouldn't really say darker, but sensitive material. And I do enjoy that. He does good with this work. All right.
Yeah, it really does. And I'm just like, man, it just works so well.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I do notice is like, I don't know, I kind I do like the little bit of the like I do like this one with that dark and fantasy aspect where I'm just like, well, some the hinting maybe,
For what, the Absolution?
yeah, absolution.
All right. So as
I do think you're doing it well.
I'm glad to hear that. I do, and it actually does really help me out a lot because I struggled deeply with this last night while I was writing it. It's actually started out as one chapter, so essentially up to the point where Marinette is with her mother. That was all I had written from last night. Everything else is from today. That whole beginning part with Adrian and then the first part with Marinette was added today and separated into its own chapter, which allows me to kind of go a little harder on chapter 2, which is where things get really spicy. So basically, just diving right in, essentially. Not trying to really draw it out, but just dive right on in, which I think is probably better, in my opinion at least. So, any other thoughts, comments, concerns? Yes, no, maybe so?
Oh no,
All right. So, Skull, what'd you decide on? What are we reading?
actually, I kind of realized
What?
there was one thing that was there was like some of the hero description was a little bit repetitive.
That's going to be.
I kind of noticed that it was like a little bit too repetitive, but
Hmm.
I just that's one thing I kind of took note.
Remember, this is also a draft too, so I will go back later and edit it and
Yeah,
take out some stuff. This is just still raw and whatnot. Let's do Lost, Vanguard, then if we have time, one last poem I sent. That way it's alternating. Alright. So this is Lost. Short little poem by our darling little skull. It's Faded Meetings AU. I don't know what Faded Meetings are, but I think this is the one you wanted me to read, but I hadn't gotten to it yet. So here we go. I'm reading it. All right. I sit all alone on an empty roof, staring out at the endless void of space. Thinking of you here with me, holding each other so close. We were two of a kind, you and I, able to take on the world and anything in it together. You are happier with her now and your baby to come. Happily you smile, holding her close now instead. I remember those smiles, those tender embraces. Together I felt like nothing else mattered. I look down in the streets below, cars passing by like streaks of light. I get an ache in my chest that just can't shake when I think of you. Up here on this roof, the streets below call to take me away from here and all of this misery. It would be easy, too, to fall to my doom. A beautiful view of the stars, fond memories in my heart. I could slip away from this life, slip away from the pain. But at the end of the day, I know that's not the right way. Maybe someday I'll find my way. No longer will I be lost in this endless void of stars and lights. All right, and that was the little poem. Ah, it's a Ninjago at you. Okay, thank you. Uh, I liked it. It was really cute. I do see where you had the subtle mentions of suicide. I wouldn't really call it subtle, but you know. Well, I don't know. It could be interpreted either way, in certain ways, I guess. Depends on the person, maybe. But it was a good skull. That was a really good one. Um, grammar though. Just say that right now. What did you think, Ruthus?
Yeah, I kind of have the same thing, just grammar a little bit, but I think it's a good it's good a good baseline. Good baseline though.
Yeah.
I do yeah, I can see it as like a rough draft.
Well, I think most of these at this point are kind of like rough drafts, except for like Solidzy stuff, who's posted up on that. Well, and as I come up here with Vanguard here. All right. So my question for you two is: do you want the first two first? Okay. Do you want Sparrow Chapter 1 and Arthur Chapter 1, or just one or the other?
Why not both?
All right. That's all I wanted to know. All right. Vanguard. Nightingale. Nightingale was first, right? Nightingale was first? I can't remember if I think Nightingale was first. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Skull. I think Nightingale was first. I don't remember. Come here. Come here, Wattpad. Be good to me. There you are, Vanguard. Son of a bitch, Wattpad. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yep, that okay, Nightingale 1 was the first one. Okay. Alright, here we go. Now, just for context, this is an ongoing series that's currently on hiatus. It takes place in our modern world with just a touch of superheroes. I don't know if either of you two have started reading this, but here you go. This is your chance for me to read it to you. The bell rang that signified the end of another day. The other students rushed out, their possessions already in hand, ready for that sweet relief. I sighed and heaved myself to my feet before I gathered my things. The halls were awash with conversation that made hearing your own thoughts near impossible. The students that didn't stop to chat pushed and ran out of the school, all too eager for freedom. Not me. I made my way downstairs to detention. No one else had arrived yet. Well, that wasn't the teacher. She looked up from her book. Back again? What's your crime this time? I didn't answer. I placed my stuff on a desk in the corner, then rifled through my papers until I found the detention slip. I headed back to her and handed it over. She took it and read it, a small smile on her face. Having an attitude, eh? That they really are just handing these out, aren't they? Silence. She sighed. You know the drill, young man. 30 minutes after the bell rings. No talking and do something productive with your time. I nodded and returned to the desk with my belongings. I pulled the pencil from my spiral of a notebook and flipped through the pages. Lines upon lines of music flew by as I looked for my recent addition to the collection. A mix of practice sheets to write and experiment with tunes, jingles and melodies, with the majority of the sheets just being practice exercises. Today I figured I'd do a practice exercise. Once I found an empty sheet, I placed the pencil on it and took out my earbuds and phone. As I put the earbuds in my ears, I heard an all too familiar laugh and looked towards the door. Victoria made her way to detention along with a few other stragglers. Each handed the teacher the slips and took their seats. Victoria spotted me immediately and took a seat next to me. Hey, Arthur, how have you been? I looked down at my notebook. Fine. How's your songs coming along? We've been hearing good things from John about your work. It'd be better if he made up his mind. She snorted. What kind of band is he making now? Alternative rock. She sighed. It's better than his previous ideas. Maybe he'll actually keep some bandmates with this idea. Well, he'd asked me to do the keyboard when the songs call for it. She gasped with a delightful smile. Really? That's awesome! Maybe you could even sing. I frowned and looked away. Come on, you're a fantastic singer. Just look at the school's choir. It hasn't been the same since you quit last year. The concerts have been really boring this year. I don't want to. Why? You used to sing all the time. But ever since we started this year, you've stopped, and you can't dodge me forever. I just don't want to sing. That's it. The last bell rang before Victoria could respond. I sent a silent prayer and looked to my sheets. I glanced at Victoria, who mouthed, We're not finished, then started on her work. I rolled my eyes and scrolled through my music. I settled on a simple instrumental piece. I put my phone aside and closed my eyes as I focused on the music. A forest unfurled in my mind as the song began with distant bird calls. I stepped carefully through the foliage as a gentle breeze passed by. It carried along it the sounds of flutes and strings. The birdsong faded as angelic vocals echoed through the area. I treaded along, my pace grew with the winds and strings. My heart pounded evenly with the drums as I headed towards the source of the song. The wind picked up and my heart pounded faster as I took off into a sprint. I weaved through the trees and bushes until the greenery began to thin to reveal a small grassy slope. I fell with the wind and tumbled downhill. The wind died down to a breeze once more as I sat in the overgrown grass. I looked out in wonder at the fields before me, bathed in a golden light from the sun's rays that peeked through the clouds. The voices quieted to a hum as the breeze passed through the flowers. Their scent carried along to embrace me before the wind vanished. The clouds parted when a new piano piece began. Sunlight filtered through an unburdened sky. I stood with the rise of strings and was pulled away by a woman. I looked as a younger Victoria came into focus with a delightful warm chorus and her toothy grin. I smiled and laughed as she led me to an old park from our childhood. We laughed as we ran around merrily, playing our games. We ran to our parents as they talked happily amongst themselves. I eyed my parents and then stopped. When they turned to me, father vanished and a shadow fell over mother. An ominous hum boomed in the park, then faded. I turned back to the sky as the clouds returned with a dark, foreboding appearance. They covered the sun's light and left only darkness. Soft plunks echoed with single drops of rain fell and grew into a somber piano, accompanied by a silent violin. The skyscrapers I saw every day loomed through the mist. The neon lights gave off a faint glow as hints of thunder rumbled with the drums. The music swelled as the rain poured down when I saw Mother across the empty street. She looked back at me and ran away. I chased her down through the now oncoming traffic. My cries for her were drowned out by the roar of thunderous drums. I chased her through the crowded sidewalks, pushing aside whoever got in my way. I reached for her as the rain led up to a trickle, but she pulled away. When I spoke, she flinched and covered her ears, despite my voice silent. She turned and left, but I remained behind. I watched her leave with a hand outstretched that she'd never take again. A hand touched my shoulder that snapped me from my trance. Victoria stood beside me and glanced between me and my notebook. I looked at it and saw a large pencil mark from a note. I wrote to the bottom of the page where the lead snapped. Victoria removed an earbud. It's time to go. I looked around the room, and everyone had left except for us and the teacher. I nodded and gathered my stuff. We headed out, followed by the teacher. She walked us to the main entrance, then left as we exited the school. I took a deep breath once outside. What's wrong? You did that last Tuesday, too. I sighed. It's not important. Victoria turned to protest, but was interrupted by a girl taller than herself that smothered her in a hug. I scoffed and rolled my eyes. Hello, Claire. The girl looked at me and smiled. Oh, Arthur. Coming from detention, I take it? What's it to you? Nothing, really. I just wish my sweet little Victoria wasn't influenced by you. Come on, Claire, leave him alone. Besides, we've been friends for years, Victoria butted in. Claire rolled her eyes and took Victoria's hand. Let's go, babe. We have important things to attend to. Victoria tried to protest but was ignored by Claire as she dragged Victoria off. I watched as Victoria mouthed an apology before they disappeared behind a corner. I stood there for a few moments longer, then sighed. I mouthed my own apology and headed home. I took my time, careful to drag out the time as much as I could. I didn't want to deal with Mother. However, knowing my luck, she's already home. I made it home with some hour after I left school. Took the scenic route, stopped in at a few shops to kill time before I dared to head home. I fumbled with the key to the apartment and opened the door slowly. I stepped inside and glanced around. It was silent, and it didn't look like anyone was home. I let out a sigh of relief that was followed by a loud crash from the kitchen. I rushed over to find Mother staring at me, hunched over a broken plate. Silence clung to the air. I looked anywhere that wasn't her, but her eyes were locked on me. I started, but she cut me off. What have I told you? Not a single word from your mouth. Don't you think? She flinched at my words and covered her ears. I gritted my teeth. Stop it! Stop treating me like I'm a monster! Shut up, shut up, shut up! I don't want to hear your awful voice! She ran past me and flew out the door. Words caught in my throat as I watched her flee. I shook my head and ran to the door. She already made it to the end of the halls and the stairs. Mom, wait! I called, but she kept running. My heart ached as I watched her leave again. It never changed. If I didn't chase her away, she would leave on her own. No matter what I did, she would leave me behind. And I was tired of it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my music. I picked the first instrumental piece that popped up, but my finger hovered over the play button. I stared at it for a moment till tears welled. I threw my phone into the apartment and slammed the door shut. Tears fell as I collapsed. Why can't I do it? I did it all my life to keep them together, to keep us a secret, to keep us a family. Yeah, I can't do it anymore, not to her. Why? 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 I let out a silent scream and punched the wall. I have the power to stop her, to make her stay, but don't. Why don't I? What stops me? I don't understand. Knock, knock. My heart leapt at the sound. I waited to see if the door would open, but it didn't. A sigh sounded from the other side. Arthur, I know you're there. Victoria. I leaned against the door and kept quiet. How do I say this? Look, you can keep dodging me all you want, play like nothing is going on, but something changed in your family, and I'm not the only one worried. We've all been family friends for years, after all. And I just want to let you know, yet again, you can talk to me. I may not understand, but I won't leave you, no matter what the problem is. And no matter how much you try to shut me out, I'll always be here. I stared at the floor. So many times I've wanted to tell her the truth, not just about my parents or how I'm feeling about everything, but also my secret, the powers that I have and the root of my suffering. Why I was such a songbird all my life, always finding a way or reason to sing when there would be none. Why my parents stayed my parents as long as they did. Why father left us. Why mother looked at me like I'm a monster. I glanced out the window. It wasn't anything too surprising. We lived in a world of heroes and villains. It's not an uncommon sight to see heroes of all kinds flying through the skies, dashing through the streets, or appearing out of thin air. But you don't see many heroes with powers like mine. No, they were almost always the villains. The power to manipulate and steal was anything but heroic. My parents already saw me as a villain. I didn't want my best friend to see me that way too. I'm sorry, Veronica. Victoria. Pfft. But I'll never be able to tell you. It's complicated. There was silence. I listened and heard muffled shuffling. I couldn't see it, but I felt her right against the door. So be it. But that won't change what I said. I'm still here for support. I'll be here to listen if you do want to talk. I don't want to lose my only friend. I laughed. You have other friends. Not like you. I have people I tolerate because of my girlfriend and a lot of acquaintances. So just because I hang out with them doesn't mean I like them. It doesn't mean I can trust them, rely on them, or anything. It's not like our friendship. So even if you can't share what's going on, that doesn't matter because I'll still be here. Because I don't want to lose you. Thank you. A pause. Will you be alright? Do you want company? No, I need to process things. Okay, but if you change your mind, I know. Just send a text and you'll come in a flash. Damn straight. Faster than those heroes that can run at supersonic speeds. I rolled my eyes. Anyway, take it easy. I'll see you tomorrow at school. She moved, but I heard a pause, then felt her press against the door again. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you something really interesting. I heard from Claire. I raised a brow. Victoria usually didn't care for the gossip her girlfriend and her group spat. We're getting a new student in our class. That's all. Why was she so excited for something so trivial? No, the teacher said she'll be a hero. Well, a newly registered one. Isn't that cool, though? I guess. But shouldn't she be going to the academy with all the others like her? Oh, come on. Not all people with superpowers go there. We have others in our school, just not that many. Because if not the academy, they go to the nicer schools in the city. Oh, hush. But anyway, she starts tomorrow. I can't wait to meet her. I wonder what she'll be like. Think she'll be cute? You have a girlfriend. I would call her a bitch I have to suffer. Then break up with her. It's not that easy. It'd be my first time breaking up. Liar, you've had boyfriends in the past. You had no trouble with them. It was different then. They were all insufferable, gross creatures. They made it easier to leave them. But it's different with Claire. She's the first girl to show any interest in me, and it felt nice. It feels nice to hold hands with a girl, hug her romantically, and kiss her. But I don't care for her. But I don't want to be alone again. Tori, there are other queer students. Claire isn't the only one. Hell, the city is massive with several different high schools. I know, but that just makes it worse. I don't understand. Well, it just feels horrible. It feels like there aren't many people to choose from when you're gay. You go on seeing all the straight couples longing for that same relationship, to be close with another person, to give them all the love in the world. And seeing a queer couple does make me happy and proud that they're together, but in the back of my mind, I curse and ask, why can't that be me? You are just left wondering if there's something wrong with you, wondering how could it be so easy for everyone else except you? I looked at the ground, then at the door. I didn't really want company, but Victoria's voice cracked. She was likely crying if I had to guess. I turned and opened the door. She was curled into a ball on the other side with her face buried in her knees. I placed a hand on her shoulder. She turned, her eyes full of tears and shock. Do you want to come in? Hang out? Thought you wanted to be alone. I do, but I don't want you to be alone. Not when you're feeling like this. She smiled and hugged me. She nodded, then grabbed her backpack before she headed inside. I sighed and closed the door behind us. Your mother won't mind this, will she? She hasn't let us spend time like this since the start of this year. I don't think it matters to her anymore. She tossed her pack onto the couch and looked at me. She placed a hand on my arm with a smile. Well, I'm here. You don't have to be alone. I smiled. Thank you. She grinned and slapped my back. Come on, let's get our homework done. I'm not about to let you fail a class. I rolled my eyes. That was a one-time thing. I haven't let my grades slip since that. Besides, it was only an art class. No one cares about those classes. She gasped, putting her hands on her hips. Excuse you, mister. You are in the company of an artist. I shrugged. I don't see why it matters. They don't offer fashion design courses, just the basic beginner stuff you don't need. Regardless, you wouldn't like it if I trashed music. I looked away. Maybe in the past, but it's different now. Fair enough. Let's get to work. Victoria and I worked on our schoolwork for the next few hours. We finished by dinner time when she left. I moved everything to my room when I heard a knock. When I opened the door, Victoria had returned with a bowl covered with tinfoil. She shoved it into my hands and ran off to her apartment before I could stop her. I removed the cover to get a whiff of spaghetti with meat sauce. I took it to the table and ate it. It was nice to eat something warm and homemade once in a while. Since the start of the school year, Mother avoided me, leaving me to fend for myself for the most part. She still would bring home groceries and pay the rent for the apartment, but otherwise I was on my own. After all, I was a monster to her. I sighed and finished the meal, then washed the dishes. I headed to my room where I plopped onto my bed. I turned and stared out the window at the city. The sun had long since set to give way to an empty night sky. Streetlights burned brightly with the lights from all the surrounding buildings. Far in the distance were the grandest of the city's skyscrapers. However, the one that stood out was the headquarters for the superheroes in America. A grand building that always towered over the others, that gave off a soft white glow that distinguished it from the others. It felt inviting, but also filled me with dread. An individual with powers, I should be registered with them, to make my presence known to all others that claim to be heroes, even if I don't pursue that path. So the others could keep tabs on me. I've considered it ever since what happened with Mother, but I don't because of that. Of all the heroes that are paraded around, glorified, none are like me. Instead, we get their heroic deeds of fighting villains with powers like mine. Powers to bend the will of others, to make them nothing more than a puppet. Powers that could spell the end of another individual without a second thought. Powers that I kept hidden all my life since I discovered them. Ones that I used to give myself a perfect life, to make my parents happy and love each other, to make them love me and want to stay, to end the nights of fighting and harmful words. Yet for all the years I kept my performance going, it came to an end by the cursed silence. The music died away for father and saw he only as a monster. And that was 5 years ago. Silence ended the spell on mother more recently. Only mother stayed where father left. I didn't want to lose her, but it hurt. The haunted glances, the unclosable distance between us, and the never ending silence. That damned silence. I hated to keep my mouth shut, to not have music at home, but what choice did I have? If I didn't want to lose her, I had to be silent. But with each day, it got harder and harder to keep silent. I could feel myself breaking. My phone rang from the hall. I didn't move to retrieve it. Instead, I closed my eyes and focused on the music. The jarring ring transformed into a soothing yet haunting melody. I opened my eyes to my reflection. The same boy stared back, but with a slight purple glow to my eyes. All alone in the night, the sun long since set on me, the songbird has gone to sleep, and in its shadows sings the nightingale. There you go. That is Nightingale Chapter 1.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yes, yes. Skull, what about you? As Ruthless, you can give more of your thoughts if you wish. And it's also now I'm realizing how long it's been since I've actually looked at that series. Oh boy.
Yeah. But I think it's good.
And that is one of the protagonists. Woo! Okay, well, how does it feel getting your refresher, Skull? I was waiting for them. And Ruthless, what'd you think when you sent the original draft? Damn, yeah.
But I kind of remember the original draft, but I also kind of did remember reading it completely the first, and I was like, all right, interesting. I'm interesting to see where things go, and there's some things that are implied and or illicitly implied in the whole drama aspect. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Feels like a soap opera drama, but that's what you're signed into with this whole series. It literally is like, I think one of the tag is literally drama,
Yeah, it
right?
is. I
Yeah.
believe so. Because it's slice of life, coming of age, drama, because that's what it's focusing on. It's not really. Obviously, there's a superhero aspect to it, and that drives a large part of Arthur's story with the powers that he has. Clearly, as you can see already from the first chapter. But, yeah, it's pretty much just like a drama. But yes. Alright, so next one is Sparrow. And I will say this right now, Sparrow and Arthur are direct opposites. As I'm pretty sure you guys might remember, I have compared the two to Elsa and Anna. Just to give a clearer understanding of these stark differences between these two characters. Oh boy. Oh, wait, what's this? It's something else. Alright. Alright, Sparrow, Chapter 1. Last box coming up, Mom! I yelled out. I trotted down the ramp of the moving truck. Mom wheeled up to the edge of the sidewalk with another box on her lap. Finally! I forgot how much of a pain moving is. Even worse in this cursed chair. At least I'm a little more accustomed to it than before. I smiled and rolled my eyes. You have been offered a suited up wheelchair by the Heroes Association. Bah! Only if I continued hero work. I'm perfectly content with office work. Now hand over the last box. I got this. It's not too heavy. Besides, you've done all the heavy lifting. Mom smiled. There's nothing heavy about it. Besides, you don't have to get down to the Heroes Association. Don't you have to get down to the Heroes Association to register? Well, yes, but it won't take me long to get there. And I want to help, even if a little. Then how about you give me the box and wheel me inside? Give my arms a break. I nodded and placed the box on the other in her lap. I wheeled her up into our new apartment. She effortlessly tossed the boxes onto the pile in our to-be living room. All right, I'm off. Did you want me to grab dinner on the way home? You don't have to. That's the beauty of city life convenience. There were so many restaurants around that I can order delivery from and have it delivered right to the apartment. That's going to get be something to get used to. There will be a lot to adjust to for both of us. I haven't been in a city like this in years, and you haven't seen one since you were a toddler, to my knowledge. I rolled my eyes playfully. I haven't been to a city as big as this, only the smaller cities, but they're nothing like this. Mom chuckled. No, they really aren't. So be careful. I know you can defend yourself, but don't be reckless. And for tonight, come straight home. Understand? I hugged her. Don't worry. I'll go straight there and come straight home. She hugged me back. That's a good girl, my darling sparrow. Oh, before you go, what sounds good for dinner? I'm kind of feeling something like a chicken sandwich. Crispy with a side order of fries? I nodded. All right, I'll see what's around. Now hurry up, Sparrow. I kissed Mom's cheek and gave her a quick hug before I hurried outside. A grin spread as I launched off the ground and took off for the sky. My eyes widened as I soared over the city as the sun set behind them. The glow of the sun illuminated the glass of the towering skyscrapers that bathed them in an orangey glow, in contrast to the dark shadow glass opposite the setting sun. Lights twinkled below that created a sea of lights in the coming night. Other heroes flew through the sky with me. I waved to them and received some waves back. The sun had just fully set when I arrived at the Heroes Association HQ. I marveled at the magnificent glass tower that gave off a cool, white glow amidst a sea of warm lights. I landed by the doors and smoothed down my hair. My heart pounded as adrenaline pumped through me. I took several breaths and headed inside. The inside matched the exterior, a massive room of glass exposed yet concealed from the outside. It contained a couple of sitting areas on each side. The receptionist desk sat near the wall with closed doors. I hurried up to the receptionist, who thankfully noticed my approach. Welcome to the Heroes Association of America. What can I do for you this evening? He asked. I'm here to register with the association. I see. Are you registering as a hero or as an individual with powers? To be a hero, of course. I smiled, but I felt the adrenaline fading. Right. Name? Sparrow Baker. For your hero name? A word's caught in my throat. What name should I choose? A million possibilities passed through, but none seemed good enough. But what if this was my only chance to pick a name? I had to choose something good, but I couldn't settle on one. Can I change it later? He sighed. Yes, you can. Then just Sparrow, for now at least. He nodded. What is your birthday and age? I am 16, and my birthday is April 16th, 2005. Any superhero relation? Yes. My parents are Matthew and Aveline Baker. My father had flight, and my mother has super strength. Is your father deceased? I nodded. He passed away due to illness. And is your mother active or inactive? Inactive. She left the field when she was shot in her spine and paralyzed. He grimaced and gave a slight nod. What are your powers? I smiled and held my head high. Flight. Is that all? I looked around. Was I supposed to have more? I know it was beneficial to have more, but was flight not good enough? Well, no. At least for right now. I might develop super strength, hopefully. Maybe. He blinked and handed me a card and pen. Fill out this card with your phone number, address, and civilian occupation. After that, I'll have you sign some papers. Once done, we'll put your information in the system and see if anything comes up. What do you mean by that? Don't I just start doing hero work? You can, however, you won't be paid by the association for any freelance work you do. How it works is when some villain decides to cause trouble, we'll call on you if you for you to handle it. Either bring in the baddie or find a way to shut them down and you'll get better assignments. What if I fail? If you fail that, you are either stuck with the particular delinquent depending on their threat level. For heroes like yourself, we tend to stick you with a lot of minor troublemakers. As a result, the newbies tend to get assigned to the same villains. You are only taken off the case if something changes where it could be a danger to your life, if the association believes you can't handle the assignment, or you complete the job permanently. I see. So I just fill out this card with the basic information? Yes. I nodded as my shoulders drooped. I filled out the card and gave it back to the receptionist. All right, Sparrow. With being a transfer high school student, we'll contact the academy about your entry into. Oh, I am not going to the academy. No? Where are you going to school then? Northview High School. Oh, I see. I'll make sure to put that in and inform them of your entry into the field. Okay. Are we done? Almost. Now the papers, and then you can leave. He turned and rummaged through the file cabinets behind him. A few minutes passed before he turned back to me. He spread the papers out and handed me a pen. These papers are your acknowledgement of the dangers that come with the job, which include but are not limited to pain, injury, mutilation, paralysis, trauma, death, and so on. One here is a protection form where if you are injured or worse, you will receive immediate treatment and compensation for any time away depending on where you are in the business. As a new entry level, don't expect much, so don't be reckless. And one last thing at the end is your consent to begin your life as a hero and follow the rules. Disobeying or breaking the rules can result in punishment depending on the severity of the crime. Any questions? I might. Let me look through these real quick. I skimmed through them to just double check. Each was as he said, each was as he briefly explained. And just as he said, being new, I would have my hospital bills paid if injured, but no compensation for the time away. There would also be pay once I was called into action and paid accordingly for my time. Bonuses would be distributed if the villain is apprehended. There also wasn't a booklet of rules or regulations with the last form. Do we get a packet or something that goes over all the rules? He looked around and pulled out a small booklet. Oh, I expected it to be bigger. He shrugged. You'll find it pretty straightforward. Right. Also, with the pay, how do you guys distribute the money for the jobs? We prefer to distribute that through direct deposit. What if, I don't know, don't have a bank account yet? Then you'll come back here to pick up the checks. However, we highly recommend that you have direct deposit set up. Okay, I think that's about it for the questions. I signed the papers and handed them back to him. All right then. Everything looks to be in order. If any complications arrive, we'll contact you. Otherwise, welcome to the association, Sparrow. Have a good evening. I nodded and left. Once outside, I sighed. I took out my phone and entered the address, then flew home. Once home, I kicked off my shoes and sat on one of the boxes. My mother wheeled out from the kitchen with a to-go box in her lap and water. She handed me the box and water. Welcome back. How'd it go? Well, not bad, just not what I was expecting. What did you expect? I don't really know, just not a job application, interview, and registration rolled into one? I sighed and nodded. I opened the box. It was a crispy chicken sandwich with melted provolone and honey mustard along with an order of fries. It's not glamorous, but you did take a big step. You should be proud. I am, but also not? Why do you say that? I just thought, with being a hero, it'd be more. Where I go out and just do hero work, do my part to make things better, not sitting around and waiting for something bad to happen. I honestly think I would have preferred that over what your father and I went through. Always fighting the other heroes and the intense competition between us to do something in the public's eye. At least this way it's safer and somewhat fair. Still a letdown. I know. But all that aside, please be careful. This is dangerous work. I smiled and rolled my eyes. I know, I know. I'm serious, Sparrow. I blinked and stared at her. There was an unwavering intensity to her eyes. While the lifestyle and very existence of heroes and even villains being glorified by the media is not something to take lightly, there is serious risk to take that could result in lifelong harm from both sides. I looked down, partially to avoid her gaze, but also at Mom in her wheelchair. She was hurt on the job. Her and Father were about to apprehend the criminals when she was shot. Father had let them go to save Mom, which got him kicked out of the association. Mom was permitted to continue work, but she left. Once Mom recovered, we moved to a small town out of state, at least until now. I know. I'll be as careful as I can. That's all I ask, my sparrow. I don't want to see you hurt like me, or worse. Her eyes misted over as she pulled me in for a hug. I hugged her back. I won't be a fool, I promise. She smiled and kissed my cheek. Good. Now eat your dinner before it gets cold. Then we can do some unpacking. After that, it'll be off to bed early. It's a big day for both of us tomorrow. About that. I didn't really question it before, but I have to ask something. Why didn't you enroll me in the academy? She sighed. Well, it's more your father's wishes. I relocated to the city when I was in my 20s, but he grew up here. He shared with me the horrible time he had growing up due to bullying and being sidelined. What happened? See, darling, amongst our society, heroes with more than one power or exceptional abilities are prized more than the commonplace. Flight, strength, talking to animals, super speed, powers like those are seen as run of the mill. And your father, only having flight, was bullied, belittled, and such. He told me if you didn't develop any of my strength by the time we came back, not to enroll you in the academy. Do you think I could develop your strength? It's possible. I've heard of people having their powers develop much later in life. I smiled slightly. Thanks. Mom smiled and ruffled my hair. Now eat. You'll need the energy. I nodded and watched her grab a stack of boxes and head to one of the currently empty rooms. I sighed and ate while I read the booklet. The receptionist is right that it was straightforward. All the basic laws were listed, like no stealing, assault, blackmailing, bribery, murder, though there was an asterisk by murder with the side note that said it was only to be done as a last resort if your life was in danger. There was a section about behavior as a public figure, but it seemed more for the higher ups, which was to be a humble, respectable role model. That part didn't sound hard. It was easy to follow the rules and be good. I put the booklet aside and cleaned up the trash. It was a lot with the association and a bit of a letdown. But I wouldn't let that get me down. I may not be able to just go out and be a hero. I may have to wait for assignments, but perhaps Mom is right. It does sound safer this way despite it all. I know she doesn't want this life for me. I'm still grateful that she lets me pursue this path, but hopefully her mind can be a little at ease. And hey, it might not be so bad. Dealing with small time troublemakers was easy before. I'm sure it wouldn't be a big deal either. I'm sure I'll make something of a name for myself before I know it. Maybe I could pick a better name before that happens. Sparrow works, I guess. It worked back home, but this was a new place. I needed something that could stand out. Maybe something like Zephyrlass, or maybe Aurora. Ooh, or what about Aerial Strike? That one seemed promising. I'd have to think about it more. And what about a costume? I never had one before, but I wasn't officially registered either. I should probably have something that makes me stand out. Should I go with a bodysuit or maybe a pants and t-shirt thing? Ooh, and a nice pair of black boots. Maybe some gloves to go along with them? Perhaps a cape. I do love capes, but they do get snagged easily. On second thought, no cape. Better safe than sorry. I wonder if the association would make costumes for the heroes or if it's something I had to do. It shouldn't be that hard either way. It's a massive city, and I'm sure I could find someone that could make a costume. It'd have to wait. I don't have much money and won't have more until I start getting called in. In the meantime, my normal clothes will be just fine. Sparrow, you almost done, dear? I blinked. Oops, took too long. Yeah, coming! And there's Sparrow chapter 1. Gosh. Oh, I'm sorry for laughing at the end there. Ah, They both leave me. How dare they? Alright, Emily.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Alright, so what'd you think, Ruthless?
A lot. Very good. It's just a lot going on in
Yeah.
one. Like it's a lot. A
Well,
lot.
funny thing is, like, it's also not because it's all contained basically in like one
It is.
place, and it's just setting up. It's like literally a job interview.
Yeah, it kind of
That's all
does.
it was. And no, I feel that. No, sometimes when you're applying for a job and they're explaining everything to you, it's very overwhelming.
I mean, it does. It is a job. Like I believe. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
and it
it's what
does.
it was.
It does give the general like that vibe of it. So comments on that, making that vibe.
That's good. It's to kind of capture that realistic aspect to it. It's like here you are thinking it's gonna be like this grand thing, and then it's a job interview. uh, life is disappointing, kids. Tell your friends. Oh gosh. But
Oh,
I
you're talking about one by the guy that joined.
no, I'm just saying in general, life sucks. Tell your friends.
Yeah.
that's that's the joy of it. But I think let me take a look at this one. How long is this? I could do this one real quick. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is by Skull 2, and I know he's technically probably not back yet, but how long did it take to do a fucking bio break, boy? He's probably distracted with something. Alright, well, I will read this for you then, Ruthless. The King's Daughters. And then we'll close out. So, ready? Yes, no, maybe so. Ruthless. Oh, well. Okay, so the last piece we're going to read here is The King's Daughters. This looks like another poem, and
Yeah.
it's by Skull. Alright. A choice I get for the very first time, a promise for a better life. Away from the land I know so well, goodbye to my old life as I sail away, to new lands where my new life awaits. A grueling trip across the sea leaves many to die. I feel unwell on this harsh voyage. Is my new life really worth this? The answer is unclear, only time will tell. Land! My new life is in view as I step onto the upper deck. An interview is to happen soon. It is where I will choose my husband to be. Under the Lord's watchful eye, I learn of the vices held by the men of this new land. A match is made, a lovely man to secure a future with. He shows me our land, a beautiful place for our future children to grow. Our goal is 10 children, 10 beautiful children to secure a future. Time passes, I watch my children grow. My life has long since improved here in this land. I am happy, freed from my past. I am no longer stuck without a choice. My question from when I was younger finally answered. My trip in 1637 was truly worth the hardship. My new life was indeed worth all the hardship. I was given a choice to help expand. I cared for my children and watched them grow. My husband worked hard to take care of us all. Now my children are grown, my job is done. I smile as my life slowly fades into a peaceful nothingness. Well, shit. That is, shit. Alright, what'd you think of that, Ruthless?
Pretty decent. Pretty decent.
Yeah, short, sweet, to the point. It's pretty nice, I'll give him that. He knows how to write poetry. Good on you,
Yeah,
Skull.
he does.
I know he's not actually here, but like, well, but I think that concludes it. That was basically everything. So, Ruthless, after all the stories, what are your final thoughts?
Um, Decent, very good. Good writers. It's not like a. I'm actually curious. I'm not sure if I could. Actually, I'm gonna say At least it's not some weird J.K. Rowling bullshit of like retconning the shit in mid since season mid writing or well not mid writing but afterwards.
Right. That's why I'll never write a book. Never. I always change my mind as I go. And somehow it works out, and I don't know why.
To be fair, at least you have it down in like one thing, and then you're just like, okay, this fixed, this fixed. Oh, you don't like this idea. At least you can like fix it.
That's true. Know how
But
to
with a
work with
book,
your story.
but the book, you have to go through like publishers, and you're gonna have people trying to refix certain things or have to negotiate certain things with your publisher.
Yeah, that's why self publishing is amazing because you get to keep all your creative liberties.
Yeah. The only withdrawal is the money. That's what I remember someone telling me.
If you're not trying to go for a full time author job, then self publishing really isn't that bad of a choice because, again, you get to keep all
Ah,
your creative liberties and all that shit. Like,
I
again,
see.
if it's something on the side, self publishing is not a bad thing. I've know a lot of people on Twitter that self publish and it does not cost them an arm and a leg.
Okay, that explains a lot. I
Yes.
just had like a cousin of mine that is recently trying to get, wanting to get into it, but they were like wanting to do it as a job. I was like,
If
you
you're gonna
sure?
do it as a job, you're gonna have to go through a publicity, like a publisher and all that shit.
Yeah. I was like, you sure you want to do this with the whole publisher? Because I will admit, I really do think the people who does self publishing, they're amazing with how they can do it and how they just try. Because public writing that much is a lot of effort.
You're telling me. I already know.
That's why I just generally think people who really are harsh on these creators, like really harsh, and then try to compare like publishers and be like, "Oh, you do not fit these standards." I'm like,
Oh
that's
well.
just a dick. Like now, I'm not saying you cannot criticize those writers, but don't be like a fucking dick to these self publishers. Like, be constructive with the criticisms. You know.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
honestly, I do think this story is these stories and the short poems are interesting.
well, we appreciate it, Ruthless. We try our best over here. But that is gonna be it for this episode. Um, guys, have a wonderful morning, night, evening, whatever the case may be, and we'll see you all next time.